Hey there YouTube, I'm back. So today we're going to do the disassembly and reassembly of the Stevens 77C shotgun. So I decided to do two separate videos. I was originally going to do a field strip and then take apart the trigger assembly and put it back together at the same time. But then I realized that the video is probably going to take forever. And I've decided that for the trigger assembly I'm going to use a different camera to show you what's going on, because there's a lot of little parts and pieces in there, and it would definitely benefit from some better picture quality. Okay, so before we get started, I'll just do a quick overview of the tools that you'll need to field strip this gun. So I have here a Wheeler Engineering gunsmith screwdriver set. This is the 89-piece set. I highly recommend this if you're going to be doing a lot of gunsmithing on your own at home. The bits are just excellent. They fit into slotted screw slots very well, and I haven't buggered up a single screw yet with these. You're also going to need a long flat screwdriver. This is just a standard 3/8 by 8 inch that you can get from the hardware store. I also have a set of gunsmith's punches right here. They're tapered. You'll definitely want these for taking out pins. I do have one roll pin that I have to take out, and that's to remove the firing pin. But I don't have roll pin punches, so these are going to have to do, but they'll work alright. And the other tools you'll need, I have a small hobby hammer with a nylon and a brass end. And I've got a couple of small little slotted screwdrivers as well, just for prying out small parts. And you'll need a pin block. This is just a homemade pin punch block. And that is pretty much it. So it's time to get started. So the first step in taking apart this gun is to remove the buttstock. When you take the buttstock off, there's a long stock-through bolt right here, and when it's tight it puts pressure on the trigger group. So if you try to remove the trigger group with the buttstock on, it's going to be a lot more difficult to do. So we'll take off the butt plate first. Okay, this is where your long flat comes in handy. Okay, so there's your stock through bolt. It has a washer and a lock washer on it. If these happen to be missing, they're just standard 5/8 washers that you can get from the hardware store. So the next step is to pull out the trigger group. This one has a new trigger group pin in it, and it's very easy to push out. You don't even need a hammer most of the time. So remove the pin. Now we're going to take out the screw. And it just slides out there, just like that. So that's your trigger group. As I said, we're going to leave this together as is right now. I will show you how to do it properly. I'm going to do a full disassembly and reassembly of this group right here in another video, and we'll use a higher quality camera so you can see what's going on. And one of the cartridge stops fell out. That's the left cartridge stop. So if you know anything about pump shotguns, the cartridge stop essentially just prevents another shell from leaving the magazine tube while the bolt is forward. And this particular cartridge stop on the left side, it basically just sits there. There is a little pivot point for it to sit in on the rail right at the back here, if you can see it all, right there. And it has a spring on it with a very tiny little brass plunger. Hopefully you can see that right there. So as far as I can tell, this little brass plunger, the purpose of it is to just apply more pressure to the spring so that during normal operation the spring won't just pop out, because there's really nothing holding the spring in place on the receiver. Like, it basically just sits right on the rail. Maybe you can see a little bit right there, but right about there, that's right about this point here, that's where that spring will sit. And now the next step, fairly simple, is removing the breech bolt and the slide assembly. So the slide arm fits onto the slide assembly by this little trapezoidal cutout right here. And there's the trapezoid tab that kind of sits on the slide assembly. That's basically how the slide arm and the assembly fit together. So all you have to do to remove it, you pop it up with a screwdriver just like this. Then you can push the slide back, and that's it. It all comes out. So that's your slide assembly with a little plunger and pin right there that engages with the firing pin. And when you put the slide assembly and the bolt back in the gun, you hook them together just like this. So I'll show you how to do that afterwards. The next step is we're going to remove the slide arm. Well, actually, first we're taking off the, we're removing the magazine tube. So this is the magazine plug here. Take out the spring. And the magazine tube can just slide right out, just like that. And now the slide assembly just pops out of the receiver, and that's it. And there's the magazine follower. So now you can remove the fore end if you want. The fore end is basically just held on by these two screw-on collars at each end. There's probably a special wrench that you can buy that can remove these collars if they're really tight without marring them up. I was able to just do it using a large, like, flat elastic and just putting it over top of it like a jam jar, and just using the extra grip to loosen it off. This one's been loosened off a few times now by myself, so it's very easy to remove at the moment. Okay, and then your fore end just slides right off, and that's all. So this is the slide arm assembly with this tube that slides over the magazine tube. Numerich actually sells these parts separately, so there is a way to take them apart. It looks like the slide arm is actually riveted to the tube. Now, I really, I would like to take them apart somehow because it would make it much easier for refinishing. And also, this rear collar that holds the forend in place, it's quite loose, and it would be really nice to take it off and be able to come up with a fix so that this can be tightened up a little bit. If I do figure out how to do that without completely destroying the thing, I'll let you know later. If it won't come off easily, I'm just going to have to try to refinish it the way it is. So now the gun is almost all the way apart for a full field strip. So we can remove the ejector assembly. It's very easy to do. You simply unscrew and you'll hear it drop down. Yep. Just like that. There's your ejector assembly. It's got a little spring-loaded plunger here that's held in with a pin. You could, I guess, take out the pin and clean it up inside if you really wanted to, but I don't think it's very necessary, so we'll just leave it as is. Try and get that screw out of there. And of course it goes flying. There, I've got it. So I'll just put the screw with the ejector. And now I'll show you how to get the firing pin out. It's pretty simple. So the firing pin's held in with this roll pin right here. You just grab your punch. This is where the roll pin punch would come in handy, but I don't have one. Okay, there's your roll pin. And your firing pin just drops right out with the spring, just like that. Now I'll show you quickly. I have the old firing pin right here. So the old firing pin was broken. Because you can see the tip broke right off here. And just looking at them for a comparison, now this is the 77B firing pin, of course, and the grooves are a different length on both of these firing pins. This one, of course, is a little bit longer than the original firing pin, and this one's a little bit shorter. But as I said, I've assembled the gun fully using the 77B firing pin, and it appears to work just fine. The real test is going to be at the range, of course, but that's going to be for another day. And I'll just show you the extractors quickly here. So the extractors, you can actually pop them out with your fingers fairly easily and put them back. So we'll do that. Just be careful not to let the little parts go flying because they're spring-loaded. So there's a spring in there, and then there's you've got a plunger. Now the plunger, if you can see, has a little square cutout on it. So when you put the extractors back in, the plunger goes in with the little square cutout facing towards the front of the bolt. And also another note too on this model, the extractor has this square protrusion on it. That's only on the left side, and it basically just fits into the grooves inside the receiver. So just make sure when you're if you do take the extractors out and put them back, that this is the one that goes on the left side. Okay. There we go. So the gun is basically as far apart as it can go for a field strip right now. I'll just show you quickly this cartridge stop right here. This is the right-hand cartridge stop. It's held in with a screw and then a special nut that has two grooves on either side. I hope you can see that relatively clearly right there. And this cartridge stop is not spring-loaded. It basically just sits there and pivots, just like that. In order to take it out, I would have to make a special tool, like a special little spanner wrench. I suppose it would be possible to do that with a bent slotted screwdriver. You could probably grind out the middle and make it so that it will fit that nut. For my purposes, I don't think I'm going to remove it. I'll just leave it in there, and I'll basically paint up the receiver as is once I reach that stage. Okay, so now we're ready to put everything back together. So we'll get the firing pin back into the bolt. Make sure that this groove at the back faces up so that you can get the roll pin through there. Okay, so we're going to put the ejector back in. Now I find the easiest way is to get it roughly lined up in the receiver. Then stick your index finger of your left hand through the ejection port, and then you can kind of flip it over, line up the screw hole right there. And then all you have to do is tighten the screw. It will align itself. And that's it. So now you can go ahead and put the bolt and the slide assembly back in. So as I said, hook them together just like this. Fit it in the grooves at the back. Now you may have to twist the bolt a little bit just to get it around the ejector. Okay. And leave it near the back for the moment. So the next thing to do is to put the fore end back on. Okay. So now you can slide the slide arm into the receiver, into that groove right there. Push down on the side of the slide assembly in there. Just pop it down till the slide arm will go over top of the trapezoid. Push it back. And then just push the bolt forward until it locks into place. It's being slightly uncooperative this time. There we go. It's just the cartridge stop in the way. And there we are. Now it's popped back in. So now you can slide in your magazine tube. Put the follower in, then the spring, and then the plug. And screw it back on. Alright, and now just leave it with the bottom of the receiver facing up like that for the moment. Grab your left cartridge stop, and we're going to pop it back in with the spring on that rail. Okay. Try to leave it upright if you can. Okay. Now just keep in mind when you're putting the trigger group back in that there's a lot of pieces that are just kind of held in loosely, and they only stay in place because they're inside the receiver, like for example the slide lock release lever. So you'll want to hold your thumb over that as you put it in. And also keep in mind that sometimes it's easier to put the trigger group back in if you cock the hammer. Do it carefully. Okay. So now, just line up the groove. So you're lining up the hammer bushing with the hole. Slide the pin through. Now you can put in the screw, the trigger group screw. Tighten that up. Okay, and now we are down to the last step, putting the buttstock back on. Just like you took it off, slide that stock bolt in there, get your big flat. Okay, butt plate back on. And there you have it. Field strip and reassembly. Let's just confirm that it actually works. Yes. Okay, so there you have it, a full field strip and reassembly of the 77C. So just tune into my next video. I'm going to do, as I said, a separate video on the trigger group, and I will use a better camera for that. Alright, I'll see you next time.